For those not immersed in the virtual reality industry, you might be surprised to hear that VR has actually been doing amazingly well recently. While the rest of the world was preoccupied with more important things over the last year, in the background, VR was able to make explosive gains in 2020. Ever since the announcement of Half-Life Alyx in November of 2019, it's been quite difficult to get your hands on one of the more popular VR devices. Steam alone saw a doubling of its VR user base in the months leading up to Alyx's release, while multiple large-scale studios have announced plans to make big-budget VR games in the future. But what has by far been the biggest contribution to VR's growth has been Facebook's release of the Oculus Quest 2. While Facebook has not released any official sales numbers, it is possible to make an educated guess as to how well the Quest 2 is sold, with reputable leakers, business analysts, and developers all estimating around 3 million units sold within the Quest's first quarter. Keep in mind, this means the Quest 2 has likely sold on par or possibly better than the newest Xbox models, and better than most consoles do in their first 3 months of life. This makes sense given Facebook's aggressive marketing as of late, and Facebook being the first major VR company to release a headset for only $300. On top of that same headset not needing an expensive PC or other device in order to run games. Despite the gains Valve and other VR companies have made in the last year, it's safe to say that Facebook now dominates the industry. All in all, Facebook has done a lot of good for the industry, but this recent surge in popularity might result in more damage to virtual reality in the long run than the good that has come from it. As far as concerns go, I think the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is Oculus's Facebook login requirement. A lot of other people have talked in length about this issue, so I'm going to make this part quick. For those that don't know, in order to log into and use your Oculus account, Facebook requires you to have and log into your Facebook account. If Facebook determines your account is either fake or that it isn't your own, or if they receive a false positive, they can and will ban you, basically bricking your device.
Where the video games?
If you think complaining about this online long enough could get Facebook to change this requirement, you'd be wrong. It's very likely that this was their entire intention when they bought Oculus. You see, Facebook makes its money by taking your personal information in order to find out what products you might be interested in, and uses that to send you targeted ads. A VR headset is basically the world's most perfect tattletale. Think about it. A VR device is a device that you literally put onto your head for minutes to hours at a time. It's a device that, in order to work, has to constantly be recording data about your house and your body. Facebook has made it clear in their TOS that they can and will take audio, body, and spatial data. Basically, Facebook will know more about you and your living room than likely any government. Even China is probably jealous. Oh, and once eye tracking becomes more mainstream in virtual reality, expect Facebook to be able to make money by literally determining how long your eyes glance in an advertisement. The issue with this, outside of the obvious user privacy concerns, is that because Facebook needs to make sure that the users they are data mining are in fact the people they say they are, this leads to quite a few consumer issues. For example, technically, you aren't allowed to lend your Oculus to a friend to let them see what makes VR so great. Not only that, but due to US law, minors under the age of 13 can't have a Facebook account, so technically, 13-year-olds aren't allowed to have a Quest. But once again, other YouTubers have gone into this issue with more depth than I care to, so I'll link their videos on the matter in the description for the time being. And technically, there is a way to get around this by making a Oculus test user account, though that means you're not allowed to download any official Oculus Store programs, and are instead required to sideload content. Instead, I want to mention concerns that I haven't really seen that many people in the VR space bring up. For starters, part of the Quest's greatest strength, its ability to be played almost anywhere without being connected to a PC, is also one of its biggest drawbacks. In order for VR to feel fluid, as in keep that sense of realism, you must have both a high frame rate, low latency, and high resolution. This was extremely difficult to accomplish for consoles like the PS4. So when designing a game to work on what is essentially phone hardware, a lot of corners are gonna have to be cut. And I'm not just talking about graphically either. Things like level design, physics, or number of enemies on screen get affected by hardware as well. With the Quest 2 now quickly becoming more popular than the entirety of PC VR, Developers are going to have to make a choice. Make your game PC exclusive and miss out on sales, or make sure your game can fit within the confines of the Quest 2, where you might have to redesign core aspects in order to get it to work on that hardware. The Quest is quickly going to become a hardware bottleneck for the entire medium. Considering a game like the original Boneworks simply can't run on the Quest 2, what does this mean for its sequel or other games the developers Stress Level Zero make when it comes to designing a game? Finally, we have Facebook's closed ecosystem. While I'm happy that Facebook has been one of the first companies to really put effort into making polished VR games, and while a lot of them are great, their exclusivity practices have been quite harmful to VR as a whole. Many of the best VR games of the last few years have come from Facebook, yet due to their exclusivity to what was at the time their biggest product, the Rift, many of these games are forgotten. I rarely hear people talk about the game Asgard's Wrath, for example, despite it being one of the most polished experiences VR has, second only to Alex in terms of budget and presentation. While VR is finally taking off, cutting the industry with exclusivity deals will hurt VR's growth because it means that players will have to decide which games they're willing to do with or without when deciding which device to buy. I think that's why, even though Valve knew Alex was going to be the biggest VR game when it released, they decided not to make it exclusive to the Index, despite the extra hardware sales that could come with it. Facebook making their future games exclusive to the Quest 2 might help sales in the short term, but it hurts VR in the long term. Thankfully, however, Facebook has been recently porting some of their newer games to other systems, so this might not be an issue in the future, though only time will tell. But that is far from the only issue I have with Facebook's walled garden approach to their environment. If you're an indie developer, it may feel like being put on the Oculus Store is more about luck than the quality of your product. Many great games and applications weren't accepted into the store for a long time, with many exciting games still not getting their chance to be put on it. While other storefronts like Steam also have an approval process, theirs is far less strict and far less seemingly random. Though, to be honest, sometimes Facebook's decisions are sadly not random, but malicious. Facebook as a megacorporation with multiple products will do what any megacorporation does, and that is try to monopolize industries. Facebook has been known to not support third-party products in the past that compete with their own, and it really seems like Facebook is going to do that again with the Oculus. By forcing their users to use Facebook versions of everyday apps and not accepting alternatives, they can guarantee their millions of Quest users will have to buy and use products made by Facebook. This is more likely to affect utility software rather than specific games. But VR is quickly becoming more than just a gaming device. I personally know a business owner that doesn't have a lot of interest in gaming, that has bought a Quest 2 specifically as a way to have an on-the-go work desk. If he's forced to use Facebook-made products for his work, that's a lot of money going to Zuckerberg. The sad fact is that despite these major flaws, I 100% understand why people are buying Facebook VR as opposed to the alternatives. VR has finally started getting multiple fun and must-play experiences, but why pay $1,000 for an Index to play them when a Quest 2 is less than the third of the price? The only hope the industry has right now is for Facebook to get real competition. But sadly, that's easier said than done. Most VR hardware manufacturers sell VR at a profit because that's how they make their money, while Facebook can sell it at a major loss while making the money back from both game sales and targeted ads. It's likely going to be a year or more until someone like Sony, HTC, Valve, or others are able to make a device less than $400, and by then, Facebook will have likely been able to make an even cheaper piece of hardware. VR holds so much potential. For those who haven't tried a good VR game, it's honestly hard for me to describe what makes this medium so fun. VR has only scratched its full potential and is starting to try to expand into places outside of just gaming. I can easily see a near future of being able to virtually walk around highly detailed and accurate historical settings for schools, or on the other end, getting to walk around the set or setting of your favorite fictional town. The only reason we don't get stuff like this right now yet, outside of fan mods and places like VRChat of course, is that up until recently, there hasn't been enough VR users to justify spending the resources into such projects. This is the same reason why we haven't gotten very many big budget VR games either. Why spend millions of dollars on a game for a medium that has such a small install base? But thanks to Facebook, that's been quickly changing, and now we have multiple confirmed big budget games currently in development from multiple third parties or funded by Facebook themselves. VR has also been seeing more creative indie games come out as well. Which makes sense. The more VR users you have, the more original ideas people can come up with that turn out to be fun. It's these reasons for why I'm so conflicted about Facebook's success in the medium. I'm seeing this bright future VR can become rising right in front of my eyes, but at the cost of it being brought there by a single monolithic company hell-bent on controlling everything you do in that environment.